welcome to the 2nd October update. A bit of progress on the TMD in this update, along with a new kit that I've been building. So I hope you enjoy, and any comments I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, what I've done here is I've taken the baseboard for the raised section of the TMD off the layout, and I've turned it upside down in order to fit the Pico PL10E point motors. Now the point motors I'm using have got the extended pin, which allows them to get through various thicknesses of baseboard, and you just snip the excess off when your point motor's in place. And I use these in conjunction with the mounting plates, which are PL9s, and that allows them to be screwed to the board. Now what I've done, it's actually easier to fit them when it's like this, because you put it in the correct, where you think the place is, and you make sure that the point can freely move, and you can adjust the position of the point motor to allow free movement of the turnout above, or in this case below. It's easier to fit it like this because you don't have to go under the baseboard and try and get yourself into nooks and crannies in order to do it. Obviously it's not possible for 99% of the time because your baseboard's already fixed. When your track's in, you just can't suddenly lift it up, but I find this a lot less stressful fitting it this way, and that's why I'm doing it with the TMD as the way I am, which the issues I outlined in the previous update. This is all the wires obviously coming through the baseboard from below, and now really what I've got to do is I've got to test these, and what I do is I use the wiring looms from Pico. They're PL34s, and these save any form of soldering because they've all got the kind of the spade connections at the end there. You could get your standard wire and fit these. You'll get these 10 a penny at electronic shops and stuff, but I just went with the Pico ones to ensure that the connectors are 100% compatible with the actual connections here, to avoid any issues in the future of them sliding off and things like that when access to the turnouts is limited, especially when it's back on the layout. So these are not the cheapest option to go with, but you get two in a pack, and they're about £3, £3.50 for two, so that'll do two turnouts, and another two there. So it saves a wee bit of hassle, and certainly cuts out any need for soldering, especially when you can't get back in to repair any poor solders later on when the thing's back in position. So what I'll do is I'll fit these up and I'll test them, and then I'll put it back on the layout, check if everything's working, and then get to work fixing the actual section back in place. I hope you found that useful, and a little insight into how I'm going around and about fitting these point motors. Hopefully the still images that I just showed you kind of gave you an idea of how I put the raised section back into position and reconnected all the tracks. That has all now been done, and the main support uprights have been fixed from underneath with a screw, so everything's in place now, everything's sturdy, and all the wiring has been fed through pre-drilled holes to the either the bus wire for the droppers, or these wires there, the coloured ones, they'll be going to the GCC Concepts accessory board that I showed you in the last update. All the point motors were tested thoroughly, and all he's done now is to trim off the excess from the pins and just tidy up a couple of wee bits and pieces, fix these down securely with the track pins there, and then test it for running. And that's phase 1 of the TMD, nearing completion for track laying anyway. The next stage really for me is to paint the inspection pits in a weathered concrete, put them in position, fix this track down, obviously remove the sleepers where the inspection pit is, and then start to work on phase 2 out of the 3 phases for the TMD. This section here actually it's 1200 millimeters, and the next section is 1200 millimeters because an 8x4 sheet is 2440 millimeters, so I'll slice it down the middle. So roughly it's 1200 per section, and that's how I've kind of split the TMD up for working. This section here will have a lot more turnouts going on, so that will require really careful planning. And obviously I've got the 2 main lines here running along. They've got to run seamlessly from section to section. So that's the rest of October's job, and possibly into next month. But I'm pleased I've got the first section down, and thanks for the feedback so far on what you think of it, and the suggestions as well. And I hope I've answered any queries that you had as to why I'd done the track that way. I put extra supports in here. I did them after I'd laid the track, because there was no point in putting supports in and then having an issue with getting them in the way of the inspection pits and whatnot. So I put extra supports in to stop any sag of the plywood, although ply is quite stable and not affected by temperature as much as some other man-made boards. So there's extra ones in there just to kind of give it extra support. I'd like to highlight something that I've been working on in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that is the Nightwing fueling point. It's an excellent kit, full of great detail, and it's probably the best fueling kit actually on the market with regards to 00 gauge anyway. How I built it was I sprayed it in grey primer to start with, just a kind of base, and then for the actual base of the fueling point, that was painted in a weathered concrete finish. It was a Precisions Paint weathered concrete, and then what I did was I got to work with the weathering to emulate oil spills, grime, and just general muck, and I did the base separately from the rest. And what you've got here is you've got a kind of grid work area here, obviously for drainage for fuel spills and stuff. Very messy, and round about the fueling equipment itself in the middle there you've got the hoses coming from the fueling point itself on both sides, and then you've got another one along here. I've used extra rubber hose that I had lying around. You don't get as much of this in the standard kit, which is a shame, but it's still pretty good value for money. Moving on to this side here, one of the hose ends has got a kind of screw-on nozzle, while the other one's got more traditional petrol pump type trigger on the end there. I've weathered all the equipment heavily. The pipe going up towards where the hose comes out was weathered with a red oxide, and then weathered with the grime as well, and same with the pipe work there. Don't know how well you can see it in the attic light. The weathering itself, I used a Humbrol dark grey, and then I went over it with a kind of Humbrol dark grey sleeper grime mix to kind of take the darkness off it and give it a bit of a browny tinge in places. You can probably see that there actually. And just on top of the grey, a very fine, almost too fine, a kind of browny finish to emulate just a build-up of dirt. The hoses were treated as well. They've been coated in the same weathering finish to take the shiny black plasticky look off them. And the base, as I said, was done separately from the rest. And then what I did was I just did the base of any of the pillars to look like they're actually part of the kit, and underneath the roof as well. The yellow standpipe here is a water pipe for filling tanks for the locos. I chose yellows because that's what I've used across the other side at the station, so I thought, well, that's how they appeared in Edinburgh, Waverley, so I thought, well, I'll just keep the theme going with the yellow standpipe there. At the end there's a kind of box affair, I don't know what for, maybe a telephone or whatnot in there. Again, that was just weathered or sprayed with Humbrol dark earth and weathered down, and the roof is painted in dark grey to kind of emulate felt on the roof. The sign there, I've got a pack of signs and I just cut them out and placed them on. Another little sign at the end there, and you've also got the fueling tracks, if you like, for where the fuel maybe come in, and there's an opening hatch there, or a grid work for drainage of fuel, etc. And I kind of just darkened that down as well with a bit of weathering. This particular kit has been lit using the Express Models lighting kit, and I'll carefully try and show you that just now. It's quite a fragile kit, there's lots of bits of delicate gluing required. If I lift it up there, you'll see there's 6 mini LEDs. They're still covered with the masking tape when I sprayed them, but they're self-adhesive, and you can see the wires there. 2 wires from this side, 2 wires from the other side, and I've kind of used the same method as I used at the station for putting wires from the roof through the platform in that kind of rectangular, or it's actually square sectioned plastic art tube, and I've just painted that in grey, and the wires actually feed through there and come out the bottom, and they'll go obviously through the baseboard and into the the switch at the control panel. So yeah, I've got my weathered under the roof there as well, just to kind of give it a grimy look, like the exhaust of the trains, tinting the underside of the roof. Turn it round carefully, so it's still actually just being glued. There's a wee sign at the end there as well, telling you obviously not to smoke, and to wear sensible shoes, sensible boots. Finally, the roof, I just left it in the Humbrol Grey primer, and then I picked out the kind of panel lines, if you call it that, with the dark grey weather, and then I went over it, just take the blackness off it with the sleeper grime mix that I did, and that just gives it a browny kind of weathered tinge. I hope it's coming out in the camera. I want it to be very subtle, I don't want it to look like it's been covered in mud. And down the middle channel there again, I just put a wee bit extra grime where the water would gather and sit. I just used photographs of similar fueling points that I found on the internet, and also other Nightwing fueling points that have been made, and photos posted online. And I also used George Dent's example from a recent Model Rail release, which was building a depot. So I kind of got the inspiration for the weathering of it from him. So if you watch this, George, thanks very much. I'm quite chuffed with my early forays into weathering. It's quite good fun actually. It's easy to overdo it, but I did want an actual really grimy look for this. Certainly with the oil spills and just the grime getting trampled in. Okay, this is a fueling point in position. As you can see, it will service 2 lanes. The main one being that one, because that's the side where the grid work is, but also be accessible from any loco coming out of the work shed. One thing I didn't point out in my last clip actually is the orange switch and cable on the left hand leg of the canopy there. That's quite a wee neat touch. It's a bit of detail there for you to obviously pick out, but I was quite impressed. Just a little bits of detail on the kit. It's another reason you know, it is by far the best fueling point on the market. So that's it in position. This is obviously section 1 to here of the TMD phase 1, and it's now in place and fitted down. And as you can see, both of the inspection pits are in and the track's all been laid. And you've got the single track service and shed there. I'm currently working on phase 2, which is this section in front of us here, from just about there all the way down to the join. You can see the join there. This will be completed this week, hopefully. A wee bit of change to plan with some of the track work and the position of the shed there. The shed's been moved further back than I would have wanted it in my original plans, because when I had it over these two lines it was very close to this one, so I've moved it across to here to give, you know, more space and real realistic access, because this wall was literally butting up against this and it wouldn't, you know, have looked that great. Just kind of the compromises you're working with when you're you know, working to a kind of limited width. That turnout there is a large radius Y, and it will just feed into the service and shed, and the trains will come out the other side, and it will be 2 buffer stops. Just remember that steel rule is. And this rail here will continue along, and it will stop as a buffer stop as well, and then that will allow these 2 rails to converge into one, and then there'll be some point work at the top of the incline to separate it from the main line. So access can be gained to the TMD from these 2 lines here without going onto the main line, so it allows you know, shunting manoeuvres to take place without disrupting the mainline traffic. Phase 3 will not start until I've ballasted and weathered the tracks at the tunnel mouth, which are obviously underneath where the drill is now. So I'll be ballasting that and getting all that prepared, and before I can, you know, start to work on phase 3 and continue around the corner to the incline.